Hey, everyone, it's me again. I feel like a broken record. I've been here before so many times, but here I am again. This is my maybe fourth video on my books in my bookshelves. Why am I? These are two completely different books, and I can't believe I have this one. I cannot believe it. But I actually hunted this one down because this was a story I read in like middle school. I kid you not, I read it in middle school. It's called The Girl Who Wanted a Boy. It's cheesy, it's weird, it's politically incorrect these days but I remember I picked it up in middle school because the girl on the cover, you may not be able to see here, but let me see. She actually reminded me a little bit of Allison Hannigan, who played Willow on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I was obsessed with at the time. The irony, because she's not any kind of strong, empowered woman. She's just a 15-year-old girl who's obsessed with finding a boyfriend, and so she sets her sight on this James Dean look-alike dude, the bad boy, and yeah, what can I say about it? It's very short, and it's weird, and I just remember him abandoning her at the end of it. But I really wanted it. I was obsessed with finding this book, and I remember spending hours on the internet trying to find this book, and I found a copy and I bought it. So yeah. And this book was more influential to me than I even realized, because this book was what inspired my self-published romance novel, Winter Haven. So if you've read Winter Haven, my novel Winter Haven, which I think sorry, I don't want to tumble. I don't want my leaf bookshelf to tumble over, and I know things are gonna fall. Don't fall on me, don't fall on me. But Winter Haven. This is my novel, Winter Haven, and this was inspired directly by this. It's the same concept. This is a huge copy, by the way. They're smaller copies. I don't know. This was weird, but this is Winter Haven, and it was inspired by this novel, and it's the concepts that I've always kind of was obsessed with when I was very young, and the concept is, again, a young, naive girl who's obsessed with the local bad boy. And of course, he's modeled on James Dean. He is crude and he is troubled, but she wants him because she wants a bad boy boyfriend. She's bored with her small town life and she wants that boyfriend. And like its predecessor, well, this didn't end in heartbreak, just kind of him leaving. This one ends with that. And this is still my best reviewed novel, and I was just about to say, I highly recommend my own novel, but Winter Haven, and this is my take on that trope of the good girl who wants a bad boy. And this was the first real novel that I wrote that I cared about. So this was what inspired that. I was supposed to point this novel out this is Atonement by Ian McEwan. I was supposed to point this novel out in the last video, but I forgot. And this novel is still one of those novels that I think about long after I've read it, because of the ending, that you have to go back and flip through the pages and thinking to yourself, wait a minute, what wasn't real? That didn't happen? Of course, it was made into a movie with Keira Knightley. You can see her photo you can see her photo there, and James McAvery. I'm not sure about the casting of Avery, but it also stars Saoirse Ronan. This was her debut. This was the novel. This was the movie that she was nominated for, and she played the nosy little sister. But this is one of those haunting novels. I love discovering haunting novels. This is, of course, an award winner. So as I promised, there are some other personal novels that I wanted to get into, and two of them, things fall apart, folks. two of them are Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, and this is Nalo Hopkinson's Brown Girl in the Ring. And both of these are testament to speak to me a lot as a young black girl growing up. I really fell in love with these. The Bluest Eye is still for me a story that speaks to the plight of dark-skinned little black girls in the world, the way dark-skinned little black girls are often neglected and mistreated just because they are dark-skinned little black girls. The story centers on Pecola, who is sexually abused. I can say that here because it starts out in the first line, first chapter, it states that, so it's not a spoiler. Okay, it's not in the first line. Actually, it's in, this is the prologue, but it's in the first chapter. Quiet as it's kept, there were no marigolds in the fall of 1941. We thought at the time that it was because Pecola was having her father's baby. That's the first line. So it's not a spoiler, but this story actually centers on Pecola, who is a young, so the story centers on Pecola, who is a young adolescent or pre-adolescent black girl who is sexually abused by her family. She lives with a family that has taken her in. Pecola Breedlove. She's obsessed with Shirley Temple and the blonde hair, blue-eyed children that she sees on television, living vicariously through them and wishing that people would care about her as much as they do. She's obsessed with blue eyes, and ultimately the title, The Bluest Eye, she wanted a blue eye and kind of reverted into her own world once she was traumatized. It's heartbreaking, but this is better than Precious. Long before Precious, this was it. And Brown Girl in the Ring is by Nalo Hopkinson, my queen. Nalo Hopkinson is a Caribbean-Canadian author, and Brown Girl in the Ring was one of her first novels, if not her first novel. And it's heavily inspired by Haitian culture. It centers on, I think her name is Tijan, who is basically the child of Haitian voodoo priests and priestesses, and she is kind of in denial of the powers that she inherited, but she's called upon to basically stop she's called upon to stop the organ harvesting that's happening in the city that may be tied to a voodoo, an evil voodoo priest. And it's a great story if you're into Caribbean folklore, if you're into Caribbean stories. Nalo Hopkinson is the queen of that. She is, I call the three N's. There's Nalo Hopkinson, N.K. Jemisin, and Nnedi Okorafor. Nnedi Okorafor writes African futurism, as she will tell you, and she mainly writes about in African settings. Nalo Hopkinson writes about Caribbean settings, and N.K. Jemisin doesn't really write about American, but she writes about general science fiction stuff, and fantasy stuff. But this is amazing, and this is about, I would highly recommend this to anyone who wants an introduction to Caribbean folklore, and read all of Nalo's stuff as well. Midnight Robber, I don't have a copy here, is another one of her novels that focuses on Caribbean people. So when I read this, I was like, oh my god, Caribbean people in popular fiction. I've never seen this before. But yeah, and this has kind of inspired a lot of my writing as well, because my characters are Caribbean, because I'm Caribbean, and I try to incorporate a lot of Caribbean stuff into it. And I can't say more about this, so I highly recommend Brown Girl in the Ring. And speaking of Nnedi Okorafor, Binti. Again, I love stuff and stuff. These are bookmarks. So this is the Binti trilogy. I like when they put the books together in a trilogy. So Binti is a novella trilogy from Nnedi Okorafor, who's a Nigerian American author and a very multi-award winning, multi-talented, very prolific author. She writes African futurism. Binti is one of that. And Binti is, I just laugh randomly there, but it's only because there was a debate about whether Binti is YA or not. The author says no, but the main character is a teenage girl, and she's from the Himba tribe in Africa. The Himba tribe, most people aren't aware of them. This photo here is not very telling, but it's the tribe where they have the red braids. So they have thick red worm-like braids, and they fix it up with clay. I wish I could have a picture here to show you, but yeah, just type in Himba, Himba, and I've never read about these people, much less these people in science fiction settings, and this is why she calls her work African futurism, because it focuses specifically on African peoples. She mainly writes about Nigerians because she's Nigerian, but she also occasionally goes towards other African peoples, and the Himba people is one of them. So Binti, the title character, is a young woman who steals away to study at a university on an alien planet, and this is a trilogy. So you can read all 3 books in one, or you can just read the first novella, but it's an award-winning. So Nnedi Okorafor is a Hugo, Nebula, and World Fantasy Award-winning author. She is brilliant. She is definitely brilliant. I only have ebook versions of N.K. Jemisin's work, unfortunately, so I can't show her off, but she would be another one that I would highly recommend. The 3 N's, the queens of Black science fiction. And so this is a nameless witch. This is one of those stories, again, stuff in the book. This is one of those stories that I just fell in love with years ago. The author, A. Martinez, writes mainly whimsical, kind of lighthearted, magical stories, and I've read a few of his stuff, but A Nameless Witch is the one that I love the most, and it's about a woman cursed with witchcraft, where the witchcraft, instead of making her the stereotypical witch, it's given her the opposite powers. So, well, not the opposite powers, but the craft was supposed to make her look like a crone, but instead it made her into an eternally youthful and beautiful woman, which causes more problems because then she attracts a white knight who becomes corrupted by her beauty. But anyway, it's a funny story. They have to stop some wizard who's trying to destroy the land. So it's her, this white knight, and her familiar, which is a kind of rude, crude, and very violent duck named Newt. But it's really charming for me. I really like. Someday I'm going to write a very charming witch story, a story that's lighthearted about witches. And witches are my thing. If you're familiar with, well, you should figure that out. All my cat memorabilia, my goddess memorabilia. I'm all about witches. I always wanted to be a witch from the time I saw Sabrina the Teenage Witch growing up, and I just fell in love. And then I moved into more serious stuff with the craft. And by that I mean just painting my lips black and burning black candles. But I've always wanted to write a light witch story. My WIP is witchy, but it's dark, so it kind of doesn't count. But someday I'm going to write a very lighthearted witch story. In the meantime, I'm just going to read this one ever so often. This one was written, this is given by Nandi Taylor. She is someone I knew personally, and this was published by Wattpad Books. She was really successful on Wattpad's book, and they offered her a book deal. So congrats, Mandy, or Nandi, Nandi. And I highly recommend this one. Not only because this is someone I know personally, but you know, this is a really good book if you like Harry Potter, African lore, and black girl magic. So this has all of it: dragon, princes, I highly recommend this. Last but not least, I'm getting there, sort of. Daughter of Smoke and Bone. Again, a book that I fell in love with. I didn't want to read this because there was so much hype about it, but I'm glad I gave in and I love it. This is, of course, Lady Taylor. This is one of my favorite YA novels of the past 10 years, and I love Lady Taylor's magic. I love what she does. I love the way she can craft these tales. I say she's a storyteller. She's a storyteller, and she's a magical girl naturally. So this is about Carew, who is a blue-haired girl who finds herself torn in an underworld war between angels and demons known as the Chimera. And it's YA, so what can I say? Just read it. Read it, and love it. Again, I borrowed it first before I bought it because I'm obsessed. Most of my other stuff are like one-off YA stuff. There's the Hunger Games, Outlander. I only have one of the books, maybe two, and I watched the series, so I'm kind of weirdly obsessed. And again, it takes place in Scotland, so I have a slight obsession with Scotland. And the Da Vinci Code. This is one of those books that I devoured in a single sitting because I couldn't put it down. Like literally, I finished reading this like at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, I just need to finish it. I just need to finish it. And it's still Dan Brown's best book. Dan Brown takes a lot of crap because, he's all about exposition, but it works. And I like stories that teach me something. I think I've said that before. Stories that makes me think about things, and this is one of them. So I like learning from him. And I'm a sucker for ancient things, ancient civilizations, ancient architecture. And so if I can learn stuff about weird architecture and the weird history of ancient buildings, then I'm all for that. So I would, if you haven't read this very popular novel, weirdly enough, the movie didn't work for me, and I don't know how. But this is proof that a well-written book doesn't always translate to a well-written movie. I don't know how they went wrong with that. I don't even think it's due to Tom Hanks, but hey. So, I said last but not least, but I have two more things. I won't go into this. This is Anne Bishop's The Witching Hour. Ooh. So I went into a rant about this already as well, so you can watch that video about this novel. Again, serious witchcraft. You know it. This is my thing. Serious witchcraft. And this is one of those old books that used to belong to my mother. This is my mother's copy. I try to amend it. It's missing like a couple pages, but this is Violet Winspear, who is a romance novelist of like the 70s and 80s, and this is called The Silken Barbarity. And my mother, it's one of the few books that my mother used to read a lot of romance books, and this is one of the few books she had in her collection. And I read it, and I still have it. And it's missing a few pages, but I looked it up, and it turns out in the 70s and 80s, there was a weird obsession with Arabian romance. There were lots of books about young white women who were whisked off by Arabs. I think the movie, the one with Michael Douglas and what is the actress's name? It's called something Romance in the Stone or something like that. I think it spoofs these books because it's about a white woman who's kidnapped by Arabs. Yeah, that's a bit racist now that I've said it, but in that version, she doesn't fall in love with the Arab, but he's seducing her. In these books, often the premise is young blonde white woman, as you can see here from the cover, is whisked away by Arab, wealthy, powerful Arab who tries to seduce her. Often these books ends with the Arab turning out not to be so Arab after all, and this is no exception. Turns out he's French and he was just obsessed with the Arab lifestyle that he adopted to it, and you know, of course she falls in love with him, and it's ratty. It's very old, so it's very ratty, and I consider briefly buying a new copy online, but I'm not sure what that would say about me. Again, you already saw the girl who wanted a boy. But it's very ratty, and I was kind of one of the last books my mother owned, and that was that. So I think I've gone through most books of interest, unless you just want to see something that I wrote. So this is actually my latest, I guess, romance novel. This is called Woman Unknown. It's a romance according to me, okay? And this is also available online. It's available on Amazon, and you can buy this to support me. And it's about a woman who arrives in, I almost think of my romance writing as spoofs. It's just me writing tropes that I read a lot when I was, that I read a lot when I was growing up. And this is about a mysterious young woman who shows up to a small town and has a ton of secrets. And of course, the wealthy, rich grocer who falls in love with her because men just can't help themselves. You know, mysterious, sexy, beautiful woman. Of course, she's hiding shit, and of course, I don't care. So, Woman Unknown is the latest one for me. If you want to check that out and support me, that would be greatly appreciated. But at last, I don't think there's anything else interesting in my collection. The Chronicles of Narnia and the Golden Compass books, as I mentioned before. Nothing else that I would consider to be interesting. So I have other books downstairs. These are I forgot to mention Normal People by Sally Rooney. This book is very sexual. It's new adult, and it's very sexual, but it's a fun read. I enjoyed reading it, and it was recently made into a miniseries. So if you get a chance to check that out, you can do that. But it's about two young people who met at the last month of high school, and it follows their relationship through university, which is mainly based on sex and companionship. It's, again, an interesting read, written in an interesting way. And again, I like it, which is not strange, I would say, because it was very sexually graphic, but works for some reason. But anyway, you have seen my collection of books right behind me in my own little corner, in my own little space. I can be whatever I want to be, and these are just some of the books that I've enjoyed over the years and some of the books that I've enjoyed reading. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know what your thoughts are, if you have your own kind of book collection and what makes a book memorable to you, why you read a book, why you keep certain books, and if there's just a book somewhere that you can't get over, that you're just so obsessed with, let me know what they are. So that's going to be it for me. This video is a little bit longer than I intended, but I got through it, folks. We got through it. We did it. We did it. The goddess thanks you. Anyway, subscribe, folks. Like, subscribe, share, and until next time, I'll talk to you.